and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is a speaker coach, no other than Miss Lauri Smith.
Hi, Daniel. Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome to Book 101, Miss Laurie. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Absolutely. I am the Soulful Speaking Coach. I love helping people on a soul driven mission to do more than speak clearly, more than touch people's hearts. I help them to transform the energy in the room from TikToks to TED Talks and anything and everything in between so that they are changing the world by changing the energy in the rooms that they speak in.
Changing the room. I love that, Miss Laurie. Unleash your presence, stepping into the power of your voice. That will be our topic for today. So, what does it mean to unleash your presence, and why is voice is central to this idea?
Yeah. Our voice is our instrument for navigating the world. And if someone is here to usher in change or to lead, they need to have a vision. They need to be able to navigate from the present moment toward that vision. And they also need to be able to communicate where they're headed in a way that inspires other people to join them. And most of us are actually speaking from a voice of suppression rather than a voice of expression. We've been told things like don't be too big, don't be too much, don't take up too much space, don't color outside of the lines. And we suppress our emotions responding to all of those messages, which then suppresses our presence and the life in our voice. So it's very hard to inspire someone else if we're not inspiring our own air and if we're not feeling inspired as we're communicating.
How do you define power in the context of one's voice? Is it about volume, influence, authenticity, or something else?
I would say that it is about aliveness. I don't really like the word influencing because it has too much of a feeling of making someone else do what you want them to do, which is different than inspiring them by what you are inspired by. Authenticity is a gateway in. And after we've gone through the doorway of authenticity, a voice can be powerful if it's vibrant, if it's alive, if it's resonant. If you think of our instrument, it's the same instrument for speaking as it is for singing. So if you imagine a song by Madonna from the 1980s, and then you imagine a song being sung by Lady Gaga, whether you like their music or not, when you imagine the Lady Gaga song, most people's hairs stand up on end when they don't for Madonna. That's because Madonna's instrument is not soulful, it's not vibrant, it's not alive in the same way that Lady Gaga's is. And the same is true for speakers.
Indeed. And was there a pivotal moment in your life when you realized the power of your own voice?
What a great question. I realized what was possible with my own voice during a moment as an actor in graduate school. I was playing a character named Hecate in Macbeth. She's a goddess character. Sometimes people cut that character because they don't know what to do with her. And I was supposed to play her in a very artisan mask. And when you work with a mask in theater, in an ideal world, you get it and you have a lot of time to bond with it because you're not just going to stick the mask on and use the voice that you have every single day. And we did not get the mask until about a week before the play opened. And we were in a technical rehearsal, which is supposed to be just about adding the lights and sound. And the director told me to go ahead and go out on stage. And if I didn't feel like saying the lines, I didn't have to. I could just go to where the lights needed to be. And I thought, okay, there's about 40 people here now watching, but if I don't do this now, there's going to be 250 on opening day. So with the mask on, I stepped out on stage and I thought, I'm just going to kind of play around with the first word, which was have. The first full sentence was, have I not reason? And I inhaled and I tapped into something deep in the core of my being. And with full breath and resonance, I opened my mouth and it came out, have I not reason? Or something like that. And there was so much power and aliveness and authenticity and courage and risk in going ahead and leaping when I had no idea how it was going to come out, that I realized that that process of inhaling air and tapping deep into our core and having an instrument that can actually resonate more fully and deeply, that's what's possible for me, whether I'm playing a character on a stage or I'm talking in my life. And it is actually what is possible for everyone that we've forgotten. Presence, AKA charisma, begins where primal and purpose meet. We have a purpose, we have an intention, and we're here in an instrument, a body that is what brings it to life more fully.
Miss Laurie, how has your background shaped your approach to vocal empowerment?
Hmm. I have a background in theater, I have a background in yoga and mindfulness, and I don't believe that there is a one size fits all approach to people speaking. I believe that there are 8 billion people on the planet, and every single person is unique and has a 1 in 8 billion presence, a 1 in 8 billion style, a 1 in 8 billion voice. And I hold speaking much like money, much like relationships, much like health. Speaking is a spiritual journey. We're here to spend our lives coming back home to ourselves and speaking from our full wildness, our full power, our full radiance.
Very well said. Very well said, Miss Laurie. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world. What surprising lessons about voice or presence you learn while you're doing your coaching?
I think one that was surprising when I looked back on it when we were uh, rebranding my website in 2020 was that at the root of being seen by other people, the root of charisma is being seen, and the root of that is making a choice to be seen. I remember a moment when I was with my favorite acting instructor ever, Richard Side, at the Sideways Studio in San Francisco. And that day we were doing an exercise where everyone was focused on me instead of being up there with a partner or three other fellow actors. And I kept armoring up, putting on an I'm fine mask in between these little sections. And eventually he took off his glasses. And I always knew when he took off his glasses that something that was probably going to be a little uncomfortable was coming. And he said, whatever it is you're doing in between scenes, stop doing that. And I said, I'm not that comfortable having everyone's eyes on me. And he said, then you picked a strange set of careers for yourself. You're an actor, a teacher, a leader. Part of you knows you're meant to be here. And that part of me knew that he was right and deeply trusted him and the safe, intimate space that he held. So I jumped back into the exercise and I was actively releasing all of my protections, like the armor in front of the heart and the I'm fine mask and jaw tension. And it felt like decades of protection was melting and burning away at the same time. And by the time the exercise was over, I looked out at my classmates and I could feel what kind of state they were all in. I knew what kind of day they were having without words. And I now realize that that was my first moment of oneness that lasted beyond the acting, beyond the playing of a sport. And that is at the root of the work that I do with others, holding safe and sacred space with them and for them, and helping them to make the choice to let down the walls and really allow themselves to be seen. And then a lot of times when we allow ourselves to be seen, our audience actually ends up feeling seen because we took the risk first.
Let's talk about the practical tools and techniques. What's the first step someone can take today to start owning their voice more fully?
One of the first steps they can take is to set an intention for how they want their audience to feel. Maya Angelou said, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And most of the time, if we don't take a moment to set an intention, the audience is going to feel something one way or the other. If we don't take a moment from our higher selves to connect with our why, our passions, our sense of purpose, and set an intention for what we want to happen, our inner critics, which I call the soul suckers, end up focusing on what they don't want to happen. I hope I don't forget what I want to say. I hope I'm not boring. I hope I don't talk too fast or too slow. When we're focusing on all that stuff we don't want, then we tend to notice it. I hope I don't bore people. Oh, gee, that guy in the third row looks bored. Whereas if we set an intention for what we do want, I hope to awaken this crowd. I hope to invite an aliveness in the crowd. I hope to inspire the crowd. I hope to motivate the crowd to get up and do something. If we set an intention for that, then we can look for signs of that happening in the audience, which is much more fun and much more impactful than looking for all the signs of what we hope isn't going to happen.
How do you help people overcome the fear of being too much or not enough when speaking up?
Very similar answer. When we're worried about being too much or not enough, our inner critics are in charge, and they're looking for what would be dangerous about being too much or not enough. If we set the intention for what we want to have happen and we focus on that, then everything about us, every gesture that we make lines up with what we want to create. And whether or not I'm too much or not enough, that's a soul sucking inner critic thought that fades away when I'm focused on the intention that I want to have.
Ms. Laurie, as a speaking coach, what are your short term and long term goals?
That's a great question. My short term goals are I'm looking at feeling into my offerings these days and getting ready to launch the second season of my podcast, which is called Soulful Speaking. And last year's tagline was, "It's not your granddaddy's speaking show." And that is still true. And as we're feeling into and beginning to record season two, which is going to come out in early September, we're leaning more into wild, untamed, radiant. So, guests that have been told they needed to be in a box or discovered at some point that they had their own masks and protections and they've either worked through it or they're working through it. So aligning all of my offerings more with wild, untamed, radiant, and where the podcast is going. And then my long term goals are I have a dream or a vision of dismantling what I call industrial speaking and leadership. Industrial speaking are all of the programs that were created during different waves of the industrial era. And they're the big ones that everybody knows about that tend to have programs that are one size fits all, cookie cutter, delivered in large groups so that you can just get the cookie cutter template and go off and try to do it on your own. Those were created for a time when people were managers, not leaders. People were saying the same things, making the same gestures, wearing the same outfits, giving the same instructions to people working, making cars on factory floors. That level of speaking and leadership is not going to help us with the problems of humanity and the visions and dreams of what we're trying to move toward. You can't do that from something from the 1950s. People need to embody the vibrant, alive, one of a kind leader that they are today in order to bring the change to the world that we need. So uh, if it became standard to work in intimate groups with people helping each change maker, each loving rebel, each heart centered leader to know how to use their instrument to create the change that they're here to create, that would that would feel like I'd gone a long way for my bigger dreams.
Good luck to your goals, Miss Laurie, and looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be a podcast host as well as a coach?
Ooh, get started. Get started, get help. I get started, get help, play, have fun. It's when you're feeling called to start a podcast, you will learn exactly what you're here to do and how you're here to do it as you do it. And it's a really great way for a lot of people to get started getting their message out there because, in a lot of ways, particularly if you like coffee or tea and having deep conversations with friends, once you've done a few of them, that is how podcasting feels.
Yes. Thank you for that advice, Miss Laurie. Thank you, thank you. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence you, Johnny?
I will give you two.
Yes,
One of
please.
them is an acting book called An Acrobat of the Heart. Um, it's very influential and has nuggets in it, even if you're not an actor, about allowing yourself to be a free flowing instrument. The other one is a business book that I love because a lot of people speaking also happen to be entrepreneurs who've turned their mission into a business. It's called The Soul Sourced Entrepreneur. And it really does a fabulous job of integrating the more right-brained, intuitive, visionary. I know what I see. I know what's needed. I'm called. I know in my gut what's right. With the strategy, the practical. Okay, let's break that down into manageable, bite-sized, aligned with you chunks to move forward on making your vision a reality. And I share it in part, it's been a couple of years since I read it, and I share it in part because when I first read it, I was sharing it with everybody. And I had a number of people actually come back to me. Of all the books that I've ever recommended in my life during that phase, I probably had 5 people that I had recommended it to personally come back to me and thank me for mentioning this particular book to them. So when I knew you might ask, I thought, "Oh, that's probably a good one."
Thank you for that recommended book, Miss Laurie. And can you share a story of someone who transformed their presence using your methods? And What changed for them?
Mm. I feel inspired to share someone that I worked with actually in a corporate environment a few years back. I was conducting 360 interviews at the beginning, and they already knew that they wanted to work on this person's executive presence. And while conducting the interviews, this person was more quiet, more introverted than everyone else at this particular company, or than is the norm at this particular company. And his own boss said during the interview, the 360 process, frankly, I don't think he has it in him. And when you're asking questions, you're not really stopping and having a dialogue. And I wanted, and I wished I could have said, with all due respect, you're dead wrong. He is not going to turn into you, which is what most people think. If I have a certain kind of charisma and I have an employee who works for me and I've been telling him to do it my way, why isn't it working? Well, this person found that kind of quiet presence that was authentic to him, where when he walked into the room, people felt him before he ever said a word. And he still honored his own style. He tended to, with energy radiating out, and a more still presence, tended to be someone who would speak once in the entire meeting, and everyone would listen to what he had to say, and the meeting would turn and become productive after he felt the urge and chimed in. And I looked him up a few years later, and he did get the promotion that they had invested in the coaching, because they weren't going to promote him unless he found his kind of executive presence. And he absolutely did, and he got the promotion. And you and I and all of your listeners know that the boss who said, frankly, I don't think he has it in him, was dead wrong.
Interesting story, Miss Laurie. Truly inspiring indeed. If our listeners, or yes, our viewers take away just one mantra or mindset shift from our discussion for today, what would it be?
Your voice matters, and the world is waiting to hear it.
Definitely. What's one habit you as people would unlearn about communication?
Anything where they have a thought in the back of their mind that's telling them that there's a certain way it has to be done.
Yes, indeed. And how do you help people align their inner self doubt with their outer vocal confidence?
Helping them connect to their vision, the thing that they know that they're here to create, the why that is really calling them forward, and turn down the volume on all of the other noise of people trying to be experts in their life and their speaking journey.
Miss Laurie, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please to listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and Mental Health 101, Love Letters in third season, and Movie 101 Review and Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Miss Laurie, how do you see the power of voice evolving in the age of AI, remote work, and digital communication?
I think the divide between people who are authentic and soulful and AI driven voices and content is only going to get bigger. Maya Angelou had another quote:
Hmm.
words mean more than what is set down on paper. It takes the human voice to infuse them with deeper meaning. the more people can learn to use their instrument. AI does not have a body. AI can't make things resonate in the same way that our human body with our human soul behind it can do.
Miss Lauri Smith, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy or any projects that you're doing right now? And most especially your podcast for sure.
Yes, I think you're looking at the website right now. The URL is voice-matters.com. You can find the podcast there, and you can also scroll to the bottom, link to the socials. I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on YouTube, and we can connect from there.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Laurie Smith because if you support her, for sure, more and more and more empowering coaching to come, more and more empowering episodes for the podcast itself to come. So, Miss Laurie, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel.
More to come, people. See you soon.